That was incredible. Thank you. You guys, we have the best, don't we? Yeah. You know, I just appreciate what music always fills our halls on what you've chosen, the guests that you create, Dalton, and the way you lead the choir, and Judy. You bring it all together in such a mastery. So touches my heart, opens all of us. So, you know, I was preparing for this talk. It's about aligning our values with your actions. And interesting to speak on this during these times. One of the humorous things I passed through in preparing was, I thought it was funny because the guy said, I'm glad we had prayer in school when I was a kid, or I would have never made it through. And I thought, that is so true. How many times as young ones that we prayed to pass a test or not to get caught for drinking and whatever it was. The prayers of survival, and now we've matured into science of mind treatment where we are responsible. So aligning with Spirit first is what we're going to focus on today. And in the 9 o'clock, I was moved to speak a lot about, because this talk reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita and Arjuna and Krishna in what is right action. And so I'll touch a little bit on that in this talk, but I wanted to extend a little bit more into another area of thinking, and I invite you to go there with me. The quotes, thank you, Damien, for reading those, because they're powerful quotes. And there's a book that I use in referencing Eknath Eswaran. He's got like all these vowels in his name and then a K stuck in there, so it makes you kind of go, Eknath Eswaran. But he takes the Bhagavad Gita and puts it into 3 volumes, and so he really takes it, each little phrase of the story, and puts it into scripture in such a way and then elaborates on it. So one of the things he talks about, these are his words, even the desire to empty ourselves, to turn our back on our own pleasure and profit, and to contribute to the happiness of others, is the result of desire to divine grace. The desire to go against desires is one of the surest signs of grace. Isn't that interesting? When desires come, which formerly used to pick us up by the scruff of the neck and throw us from here and across the bay, we will now want to resist, not with weeping and sobbing, but with the fierce joy of a sense of exaltation. So what he's speaking to, as I really butchered that, was divine grace. What is that? What is that allows us to fulfill our action, our duty, our sacred duty, being born? What is that duty? What is our purpose? It's a question that we're invited to continually ask ourselves. What is my purpose here? What is my sacred duty here? And what is grace? How does grace fit in with that? And Anne Lamott, in a TED Talk, she put together her way of looking at her life, reflecting back on her life. What was her truths? And I invite you in that practice to take some cards and write down, what do I really believe? What do I really value? And am I aligned with these? And am I using these as spiritual tools in my life to move me in my actions? Because when you really sit with that, when you really own that, you're living a spiritual, disciplined life that you've created. And there should be no guilt coming from the outside world in that, because you have created it. It is your ground. And Anne Lamott says, what is grace? Grace is a spiritual WD-40. It loves us exactly as we are. And It changes us and it moves us. Grace, she expresses, will find you exactly where you are, but it will not leave you there. Isn't that refreshing? To know that this grace, this divine grace, gives us the courage to take action. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated, "He knows me as his own divine self, as the operator in him breaks through the belief that he is the body and is not born separate again. Such a one is united with me, O Arjuna." So you are the Arjunas. And this voice of spirit within you is the Krishna, or that which is the nameless, or the name that you have described in your personal journey as the one that guides and leads you into sacred action. He goes on to say in the Bhagavad Gita, when a person becomes united with me, our prayers in the Science of Mind teaching, God is and I am. God is and I am. That is enough of a prayer in a day, to continually allow that to be the chanting of your heart. God is and I am. When a person becomes united with me, when he becomes an instrument in my hands, then even though he acts, he does not act. The person who surrenders himself to the Lord does not act. The Lord acts through him. Isn't that what we want? To be the divine instrument? To be attuned to that? To be aligned with that grace? Let's settle there. Let's allow ourselves to just move past some of the boundaries that we have placed upon ourselves by the struggling of our survival to be who we are. Imprinted upon us are the voices of the past, the scoldings of the past, our misdeeds of the past, our inaccurate, unskillful ways of the past. Yes, they dwell, but they are not who you are, because you are an instrument of the divine. The Lord, if you allow that sense, what is the Lord to you? Is that a name that you would choose to use as the grace that fills you and moves you and allows you to operate from a place of love? I want to interject a story here from Wayne Mueller, because he speaks so beautifully of what is our job, what is our sacred duty, and he brings this story of Jesus to us. First of all, there's this beautiful quote from E.B. White that starts this particular chapter. "I arise in the morning torn between a desire to improve the world and a desire to enjoy the world. This makes it hard to plan the day." I thought that was clever. So this is a story about Jesus at dinner with his friends and all his disciples. And a woman, which is presumably Mary of Magdalene, enters during the meal and, breaking open a clearly expensive alabaster jar, begins to anoint Jesus' head and feet with this precious ointment. His disciples, as happened so often when they were confronted by something they didn't immediately understand — how many times do we do that? We're confronted by something we don't understand, so let's go to judgment, okay? They became angry and confused. "Who is this woman? What does she think she's doing? This ointment and that alabaster are quite valuable. Shouldn't we stop this nonsense, sell them both, use the money, give to the poor?" You know, that's what they've been taught along the way. Jesus replies in a way, as a young child listening to a church confused him as well. "The poor will always have with you." That was his answer. Kind of a conversation stopper, right? But what is he saying? And so here's his answer, because he's living in a moment by moment, not rehearsing what is the right thing to say here. What have I proselytized before and need to say again? No, in the moment, his sacred duty. "The woman is offering me a beautiful gift. She is caring for me in a loving and thoughtful way. I do not know the number of days I will have on earth. For now, I will drink deep from the beauty and comfort of this elegant generosity of hand and heart. There is a time to work and a time to rest, a time to heal and a time to be healed. This is my time to receive whatever healing this woman aches to offer me. So, this beautiful invitation to recognize sacred duty, sacred action, and when is it time to simply rest, to be cared for, to be the one doing and being, or simply to be very still. This is our question of every day as we wake up in each morning. Mark Nepo says this regarding this very passage, and it's called his poem, Accepting This. We cannot eliminate hunger, but we can feed each other. We cannot eliminate loneliness, but we can hold each other. We cannot eliminate pain, but we can live a life of compassion. Ultimately, we are small living things awakened in the stream, not gods who carve out rivers. There is nothing to do, nowhere to go. Accepting this, we can do everything and go anywhere. It's a very beautiful, humble passage of truth. And I appreciate his wisdom there. Some days when you wake up and you have a little bit of space before you and you think, what shall I do with this? And sometimes I go to a deck of cards of like tarot cards, woo, woo, woo. Like tarot cards, or angel cards, but I don't do a layout reading. That distracts me. I pick one, and I see who I am in that wisdom. And there's a spiritual teacher named Osho that sometimes I really resonate with what Osho has to say. He's very wise, but then his lifestyle and some of the things I'm in great judgment of. So, I have this dilemma with him, but his cards are amazing. And so I'm like drinking my water and doing all this, pick this one. And it's like this nightmarish card with ugly faces and all these things. And I'm thinking, you feel disappointed. You want to put that one back in the deck. And I want something lovely, streaming, beautiful. But this card, of course, is the one that's in my face. And I had to laugh at it because, and I share this with you, it's described as the portrait of one whose whole life energy has been depleted. And I'm going to change this. It says his. I'm going to change it because it's very personal to me. It's a portrait of one whose whole life energy has been depleted in her efforts to keep fueling the enormous and ridiculous machine of self-importance and productivity. As I knew I was giving the talk this week. As I knew I had a duty at the hospital, I must be arriving on time. I have a staff meeting. I have a luncheon to go to. My self-importance. So I kept feeling this enormous and ridiculous machine of self-importance and productivity. She has been so busy keeping it all together and making sure everything runs smoothly that she has forgotten to really rest. To abandon a duty for a trip to the beach could mean the whole structure might come tumbling down. This is not about being a workaholic, though. It's about all the ways in which we set up safe but unnatural routines for ourselves, and by doing so, keep the chaotic and spontaneous away from our doors. Go figure that. So I expose myself here, because don't we sometimes create these roles of being, and they're so important, but they also bind us. Life isn't a business to be managed. It is a mystery to be lived, he says. It's time to tear up the time card. I'm going to retire in January. Break out of the factory and take a trip to the uncharted. Your work can flow more smoothly from a relaxed state of mind. Why do I share that with you? Because it's about right action, how to do right action. He goes on to say, when we can live from this place, we are soft and yielding to spirit, aren't we? Our hearts are opened, and we can move and operate in such a way that grace defines our way. It is the prayer of the heart for the Lord to fill us and to be a conduit of this truth. Because a man who has some ideas about how to live, naturally can become hard. He has continuously to carry his character around himself. So we build a structure of who we are. I have had many times people say to me after a talk, "It's okay, but you're not funny." And that terrifies me because I don't think I'm funny anyway. But I'm thinking, then I'm preparing a talk and I'm going, "You're not funny. You're not funny. This is stuff. But this stuff moves me, so I bring it to you to move you." It's not funny. Not funny. Because a man who has some ideas about how to live naturally becomes hard. He has to continually carry his character around himself. The character, like an armor, his protection, his security, his persona, his whole life is invested in that character. And he always reacts to situations through that character and never directly. How can we live to be authentic beings? So you ask him a question and he already has a ready-made answer. You could ask me a question and I could just spout back to you something that I've read before, but does it come from my heart? No, I linger longer in these moments of what speaks through my heart and what is the wisdom that the divine is longing to use me to say to you, or for you to say to me. Is my heart soft enough to hear that? This is the sign of a hard person. When you ask a question and there's a ready-made answer. He's dull and mechanical. He may be a good computer, but he's not, says a man, but he's not a woman. You do something and he reacts in a well-established way. His reaction is predictable. He's a robot. The man, the real woman, the real human, acts spontaneously. If you ask him a question, you get a response. You get a response, not a reaction. He opens his heart to your question, exposes himself, herself to the question, and responds to it. There's a subtle difference there, isn't there? Now, who do you want to be? What kind of shoes do you want to walk in? John Kabat-Zinn says, during the day, see if you can take time just to relax and be in the present moment, every moment. The ordinary ones, the boring ones, the in-between ones, as well as the hard ones. Work at allowing more things to unfold in your life without forcing them to happen, without rejecting the ones that don't fit your idea of what would be interesting. See if you can sense the spaces through which you might move with no effort. Notice how if you can make some time early in the day for just being and not having any agenda and responding from that sense of grace, that sense of space. So this idea, I take you back into the idea of action. What is your action? Is it predetermined by an idea you hold of yourself? Or are you willing to be, as Arjuna was with Krishna, to just drop down and surrender your ways and ask to be guided? Surrender in such a way that there is room for Spirit to move you and to direct you, to allow that divine current to be that which fills you, inspires you, reminds you who you are. And so oftentimes, like there was part of that that I read to you about how we think it should be, and then we try to control it to be that. Ever done that? It's supposed to go that way. It's supposed to be my party. It's supposed to go this way. And you can see it's going a whole nother energetic pattern, but we try to force it. And in Eshwaran's words from the text of the Bhagavad Gita, he speaks of action with this thought: the body, the means, the way, the ego, the performance of the act, and the karma involved. These are the 5 factors in all actions, right or wrong, in thought, word, and deed. Those who do not understand this think of themselves as separate from that. But we're all operating under this idea. We have this body. We have a pattern set up by Spirit for us to follow. And there is the act of karma. It is done as we have created to us. We've thought it up already, and if we have done some bad juju and we've got some karma out there, it's going to try to find a way in so you can find balance. So he speaks of your ego and karma all being involved. So he was sharing, elaborated on this, and he said, with every action, it has all of these stages. And if you only look at a couple of them and you think you're going to get your goal, you're likely to get caught up in what you're doing and you're likely to suffer. So this story that he shares, I'm going, oh my God, I've so been there. And Jillian, you're here today, and I was thinking about, I've given these for years, these international peace service days, and sometimes it's on any day of the week. It's always the same day in September. And sometimes the only people here are the ones presenting. And we speak out to these empty chairs. But Jillian was there. Jillian was always filling the chair. And I would always yes, you are. Don't you say no. Don't do this. Wasn't me. I just remembered this in particular. So as I share this story, he gives this personal illustration. Now, Eshwaran had a beautiful spiritual community called Blue Mountain Center of Meditation. And when he began teaching 25 years ago when this book was written, I once took the advice, so here we are taking the advice of an enthusiastic friend, and decided to rent a hall in Oakland for a public talk. That's the way these things get done in the United States, I was told. You got to think big. So I was willing. We put up posters, probably on telephone poles, and a hospitable friend offered to open a coffee bar at the hall and provide a lot of cookies. She thought, sure, that would be a draw. Well, we turned up early, and I expected a large gathering. There was 3. Myself, Christine, and our friend, who was standing there at the coffee bar and drinking the coffee herself. Would you like some, she asked. There's lots of cookies. The rest of the crowd arrived a little later. A young man and his brother, who I decided later must have needed coaxing into coming, because as soon as I started speaking, he fell asleep. Been there, standing up here, watching some of you. So imagine you rent a hall, set up a coffee bar, draw an audience of 4, when your wife is included in that, and one of the 4 falls asleep. You can see why Sri Krishna says that if you want to do important work, you cannot afford to have your ego get involved. If you do, you're bound to get agitated and hurt and be tempted to do all kinds of things to keep it from happening again. So I love that story because so many times we set up for something and we have an idea dictating how it's supposed to be, but it shows up as grace will have it. It is yours. It is yours to hold that holy heart open. He continued to give the speech. He didn't care if that guy fell asleep. He had something to say. And by staying true to his way, he developed this beautiful Blue Mountain Center. He's since passed away, but his center still thrives. And he was a profound speaker through Berkeley area. And I'm getting the high sign here of closing. But I wanted to take you to the very last passage of his particular, this is the volume 3, and this is the last of the quotes from the Gita. So ends the Bhagavad Gita. May the Lord of love, enshrined in the hearts of all, inspire every one of us to live, to make our world a land of peace and joy, love and wisdom. How do we do that? To make our land, our world, a place of peace, joy, love, and wisdom. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. How do we do that? We allow grace. We allow grace to be the deciding factor in all that we do, and we humble ourselves in a way that it doesn't matter if anybody shows up. We continue to honor our heart and speak our truth. I appreciate Judy's tinkling of the keys as Grace takes us into a prayer, which I start by words from Dr. Robert Mueller. He speaks this: decide to do at least one good action a day. Decide to do at least one good action a day, if not several or innumerable ones. Talk to God every morning and ask, what good can I do today? Spirit will answer you and guide you, for Spirit is in you. And you will have given Spirit life by asking. Spirit cannot manifest itself without being asked. God speaks to you through your soul, which is your true guide of your life. Ask God, talk to God, dialogue with God. God and you, just the two of you. This will be the source of many miracles. You will produce them all around you. Do at least one good action every day until the end of your life. Just think what a huge amount of good that could represent. And if all 4 to 7 billion people on earth do one good action a day, what a planet it will be. So join with me as we recognize the wisdom of all the teachings, of all the mystics that keep pointing beyond the beyond to the one, asking us to invite that sense of unity, the divine, to fulfill our heart's journey. And when we anoint ourselves with this vast truth, when we allow ourselves to simply be and to be guided by Spirit from this unity, from this divine knowing, grace is filling every action, every word, every thought. Let us allow that. Let us soften to that. Let us yield to that. Let us drop the barrier of how we think it should be, how righteous we are, and see all that is with eyes and hearts of love as only the divine can see. Let your heart, your eyes, your mind, your soul be filled with divine grace. That's awesome. Feel that. You can feel it in the room as you all open to the grace. The music lets it in. Our guard is down. We are one. I give thanks for this moment of truth, for the wisdom of Krishna, for the wisdom of Jesus, for the wisdom of each one of you. In tune, in touch, in love, I give thanks. I release this word knowing that it's so, and so it is.